This is the Grind to Greatness podcast, your dose of unapologetic tough love. These are your hosts, Mary Hodges and Ashley Kane.
Hey, welcome to the Grind to Greatness podcast. I'm Ashley Kane, and I have Mary here with me, Mary Hodges. She is the lovely co-host, and we have tons of awesome stuff to talk about today. We are going to jump right into the power of saying no.
Yeah, so how many of you guys listening to us feel like anytime an opportunity presents itself to you that you're always saying yes? And then when the time comes to do the opportunity, you feel stressed about it. You regret it, like, man, I don't have enough time. Or how many of you just feel stretched very thin? I'm sure a lot of you out there can relate. I know at one point in life I could. And so that's why I'm really, really excited to talk about this topic today. Because at one point in life, I kind of thought that it was absolutely necessary to say yes to as many things as I could, to multitask, to go to as many events, sign up for as many community service activities, because I thought the more I was doing, the harder I was working, the better. And luckily, I had an epiphany when I was reading a book called The Essentialism, The Disciplined Pursuit of Less. And I found out that successful people say no to a lot of things. They find out what their goals are and what their vision are, and they say yes to that, but they say no to everything else that does not align. And when I read that and realized that saying no was actually socially acceptable, I kind of felt a little liberated. And I know Ashley kind of has a personal story about her experience with this. So why don't you let the listeners know your thoughts?
Well, I mean, I think a lot of women can relate to the fact of being yes people, being, yes men, yes women, because we're natural caretakers. So in our personal lives, we're always wanting to help a loved one. It could be the smallest task, like, helping someone do their laundry or going to the store. You know what I mean? So it could be like the smallest thing, but what it's doing is it's taking away from my time to take care of myself, whether that's, getting ready in the morning, taking 10 minutes to make myself a healthier breakfast than just grabbing something on the go. And it took me a lot of years to realize this because I'm just naturally a giver. I like to receive, of course, but I'm someone who really likes to help other people, especially someone I'm really love or, a close family member. So I read this book called The Year of Yes, and I was immediately inspired by the things that I normally would say no to. So the book really kind of put the yes and no in perspective. So things that I would usually say no to, like going to an event or doing something that benefited my social life, those are the things I actually needed to say yes to. So it's kind of funny. It's like the reverse. But that goes right along with saying no. So things that don't benefit your time. Is it a time sucker? Are there people in your life that are time suckers? Now, don't get me wrong. One of the keys to success is sharing and giving back and things like that. But we're talking about the overdoers, the people like myself who will put themselves second and put everyone else first. And I was having a breakdown, and a very, very close friend, we were kind of having a conversation, and they just straight up told me, stop selling yourself short. And what does that mean? I would always put my stuff on the back burner, like going to the gym or reading or whatever it is that you like to do to benefit your own, that doesn't benefit anyone else. And so I really thought about that. I had to make the promise to myself to say no to the things that don't benefit me not immediately, but I guess don't benefit me only. And also say yes to the things that I feared.
That's pretty awesome, Ashley. Thanks for sharing that. I know that the idea of saying yes to the things that matter, it's kind of when you say yes to something, you have to say no to something else. So they have an inverse relationship with one another. So we're going to be focusing on like, what should you be saying yes to and what should you be saying no to? We're going to focus on it from a no angle because most people struggle with saying no. They're saying no to themselves all the time without really realizing it, but they struggle with saying no to others because they don't want to let them down. And the first step that you really need to do when you're thinking about this is really looking at, the current situation of your life and wondering like, do you dictate your own life? Do you control your own schedule? I can say with certainty and with some confidence, now I probably control about 95% of my schedule. That used to not be the case at all. It's something I've had to work on consistently. And now I'm probably somewhat of a freak when it comes to owning my time. And I can be a little selfish at times, but I know the importance of saying no to things because it's been the thing that's helped me, been able to move my business forward, feel more fulfilled in life. So, what's your current situation out there? Who's telling you what to do? I know a lot of you, if you're an employee somewhere, a lot of your time is dictated by your employer, but even then you can still find ways to control your time. So, once you think about that and you understand and get clarity around your vision, like what type of person do you want to be and where do you want your life to go, you can begin to start, understanding where you need to say no in your life. And I know for me personally, there was a situation where once I thought about my vision and once I knew what types of things I was going to invite into my life, I had a relapse. And I said yes to being in an accountability group with a few people. And, I said yes because it's so hard to say no to people when they invite you into something. You don't want to let them down. So I said yes, and I regretted it the minute it came out of my mouth. It was like, have you ever said something and wished you could just like grab the word back and shove it back in your mouth? That's how I felt. And the minute the thing started, it was like full of negativity. And, it took me about a week to say, you know what? I said yes to this thing, but I'm going to tell them I'm not going to do it anymore. And I'm going to tell them why. I, called the group and I said, look, I just feel like there's a lot of negativity in this group. And I vowed to myself that I'm not inviting that into my life right now. I really appreciate the opportunity, but this isn't going to be something I can do. And before I understood the power of no, that would have been such a difficult conversation for me. But once I had clarity around like what type of life I wanted, and I was clear on that, that was the easiest no I've ever said. So it's kind of like defining what your boundaries are. And that first step is really understanding who you want to be and what kind of life you want to have. Do you have any input on that, Ashley?
Yeah, that's a super inspirational thought story. And I really love how you kind of painted it out where people can relate to it. I know I can. And I think the biggest issue is that people don't realize that this is a problem. Like you just go through life saying no and yes and not even really putting thought into why you're doing something. Is this sucking my time? Because time is the only thing that everyone has equal. I don't care if you have $1 million or if you have $5 in your bank account. We all have those minutes in our day. So once you can really identify where you want your life to go and what values you have in your life, then I think you can begin to really think about what should I say yes to and what should I say no to. One of the big struggles is I think, of course, you have an employer and they're going to dictate a lot of your time if you want to, get your income or get your paycheck. Also significant others, kids, needy friends and family, sick relatives. I mean, we're not saying to be selfish because that's not the case. Sometimes you have to say no to things to make yourself better. So that way you can help those people who need your help. Because how can you do anything for anyone else if you don't have your shit on point? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And it's kind of like the conversation where it's like, you can't help somebody be healthy or take care of somebody if you're not healthy yourself. I hear about stories like that with people that have sick loved ones all the time. And like Ashley said, a lot of times it's your family, your friends, your employer, the people at work. And so I want to talk about like, okay, what can you do now to say no to people? So for one, you got to start defining some boundaries. I'll give you guys a couple of examples of things that I do in my daily life, in my business, that I've, kind of basically let my clients know, like, this is what you can expect from me, and this is why. So for instance, when I first started my business, I'm going to talk about this a little bit later, but anytime an email would come in my inbox, I immediately read it. I would get thrown off track from what I was doing. I would try to multitask, and then I would kind of get lost in, down that rabbit hole of like, what the hell did I just do the past 20 minutes? And I'm sure you've all been there. And that was a huge problem for me. That obviously affects my income if I'm not being productive and if I'm not being efficient. So then I would also have clients that would just call me out of the blue with a question and that would want my, access to my time all the time. And I basically had to put my foot down, and I ended up, using some technology that allows people to easily schedule a call with me. But I defined boundaries around when I will even accept a phone call. So for one, I do not accept unscheduled phone calls from clients. If they call me and I see it's them and they haven't scheduled a call with me, I send it to voicemail. And if it's an emergency, they'll email me. And trust me, it's never been an emergency, by the way. And so, I have this scheduler where I designate the times of the day. So I have a couple hours on Tuesday, a couple hours on Wednesday afternoon, and then a couple hours on Thursday afternoon that I set aside for phone calls. And I do that because I know when I work most efficiently, which is in the morning. So I need my mornings to be able to do the hard tasks that I got to get out of the way. And I let my clients know that, hey, you can't just call me anytime you want. Here's why. If I'm sitting and doing work on your case, right? If I'm writing your contract, you want my full attention to be given to you. So you need to understand that I have to give that same full attention to my other clients as well. That's why I don't take unscheduled phone calls, because the science around that is if you're distracted and, somebody comes in and distracts you through a phone call, a coworker, social media, a million things, it takes you 23 minutes to get back into deep focus. That's 23 minutes wasted. And I think about, calculating the money that I waste doing that. So when you start to think of it from an income perspective, you really start to get your shit together because you're like, okay, well, if I want to, have a successful business, I have to define boundaries. Another boundary that I set is that I don't, I only schedule out of the office meetings on Thursdays. And occasionally you have to make an exception here and there. But, the point is a lot of you might work in an office with a lot of people and you can never get work done. You got to start defining some boundaries around the people in your life. So, is there something where you say, look, if you have your own office, if my door's closed, do not bother me until I open it. Or if you see me with my headphones on, do not stop to ask me a question. I'm busy working. So you have to let people know and let them know firmly and let them know politely, like, hey, these are my boundaries. So start thinking of what those boundaries are in your life that you can implement in your everyday life. Do you have some boundaries, Ashley, that you could implement in your life?
Yeah, I mean, Mary's an expert at this. I'm like sitting here like, man, I'm going to do that. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. One thing that I really kind of struck me was like defining your timeout and how to keep that discipline of not being distracted or someone wants you to do something or, one thing I used to do is, I have a business and I would have clients like texting me at midnight or I would be texting them and I'm thinking, oh man, I'm a grinder. I'm this hard worker, no sleep, and that's not how it works. I mean, now I'm much more vigilant about, okay, no calls after this amount of time and it's kind of rude to interrupt. I mean, if you're the one texting your client, it might be inappropriate to text them at 10 o'clock at night. You know what I mean? So I love the fact of only accepting business calls. I mean, just because you're up at 2 a.m. accepting business calls doesn't mean that you're like this freaking master entrepreneur. I think that putting those guidelines into place is definitely going to help anybody. Even if you don't have a business. So what I'm going to implement is 2 hours in the morning to work on a specific task with my business or my podcast. And that will help me be more productive throughout the day. That way in the evening, I have my time to, go to the gym or whatever I want to plan out. Planning is key in this whole scenario.
Oh yeah, for sure. My schedule, if you look at my Google Calendar, it's packed because I schedule everything.
She's a freak, guys.
I know. But I schedule it so I know where is my open time, because I have more than one business. So I need to really be tactful in, when am I going to work on my law firm? When am I going to work with this podcast? When am I, going to have time for my family? And if I tell you, I'm so protective of my time. I don't know if it's to a fault yet. I haven't quite figured that one out, but I just know that it's given me a lot more peace of mind for sure to know that I have the control over my schedule. It's not always perfect. I was a little distracted earlier today in my email. So, I don't get it right all the time, but I know I work toward that's something I consistently work towards. And it's gotten a lot better over time since I started practicing it. So, that's what they mean. Practice makes permanence.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. But you probably actually feel like there's more time to do the things you need to do. Cause I know when I get up at 6:30 and I get on my laptop, it's like 8 and I'm like ready to go out the door,
Yeah, for sure. when you set aside that time to focus, you get a lot more done. And so, that's one part of distraction. That's one part of saying no. So saying no to people and opportunities. If you get invited to an opportunity that doesn't fit your vision, you just got to say no politely. I know, here's an example. I got invited to do an event. It really wasn't in my target audience for the legal stuff. I have a really, really specific target audience. So it's actually pretty easy for me to know whether or not an event is going to be useful in that way. But I basically said, I really appreciate, the invitation. However, this year I'm only focusing on events in this target area. Best of luck at the event. I'm sure it will be amazing. And, people actually respect you when you say no.
That's what I was going to say.
And because really they're envious. They understand like, wow, she just turned down my invitation. Like, I get why she did, but damn, I wish I could do that, because people, I struggled with it at one point, and sometimes I still struggle with it. It's not always easy to let people down. But you just got to practice and you realize that it's not as bad as you think it is. So that's kind of like saying no to other people. Another huge area is saying no to distractions that aren't really, human to human. It's more like technology distractions. So I talked a lot about my email inbox. The one thing I do there is, I knew that was kind of getting out of hand. So I schedule now, since I'm on top of it, 3 30-minute sessions a day that I look at my email. And so it's in the morning when I, start work, right before I go to lunch, and then right before I shut the day down. And I don't, I do my best. I don't always, succeed at this, but I do my best not to look at my, email any other time after that. Because if, you're just going to continue to be distracted, and all that other time is either left for client phone calls or focus time to get work done. And so once I implemented that, holy shit, I'll tell you that one change of, scheduling time to check email through the day, that was huge. That was so huge for me. And another thing I do, we're all distracted by social media. Oh my God. I don't have any notifications on my phone. My phone is on silent. I have to tell my boyfriend, like, hey, I'm not ignoring your calls, by the way. I just got to get shit done. Mm-hmm. So my phone is on silent. If he lives really close to me, so it's like, if like there's something with my safety, or if somebody's hurt, like, you can come find me, come knock on my door.
Right.
But my phone is typically on silent, and I'll be able to check it when it's time to check it, but I just cannot get distracted when I'm in focus mode. So saying no, like turning off phone notifications was another thing for me that was huge. I don't give a shit when somebody likes my comment on Facebook.
Yeah. I learned something about this. It's called dopamine. So when, especially, I don't know, I don't want to rag on like millennials, but like, you know, that's kind of.
I love millennials, by the way, guys.
So, I mean, I guess it's not just millennials. I mean, because a lot of people in our age group are Facebook freaks and, you know.
Technically on the older end of millennials.
Yeah, exactly. So, but it's this thing called dopamine. So when someone likes your photo or someone, you know, comments on something, it's like gratification and it's instant. So like, I don't have any Instagram or Facebook notifications. I don't have an email notification because, you know, email is usually not extremely urgent. So I kind of took Mary's advice and I try to check my email in the morning when I wake up. And then I have a separate email because, you know, all your junk kind of goes to this one email that you've had for like 10 years. So I made a separate email for just strictly like my podcast stuff and like super important like business stuff. So that way, you know, you're not checking your email 7 times a day and you have all these junk spam emails. So kind of setting aside that time, I think has been wonderful for me because then I can, you know, get my Facebook messages and my replies out of the way. And I think when you're subjected to that dopamine, it's just kind of really superficial. Like, what does that like make you happy in your heart whenever someone likes your photo? I mean, there's so much more than that.
Yeah, for sure. And that's definitely one way that people get distracted. Where I find myself distracted on social media, I'll have a couple of friends, they know who they are. They'll post like, you know, they'll post like a controversial topic and it's just like, you know, Facebook comments. And I love engaging with people in meaningful ways. So I sometimes get sucked in and I'll tell, there's this one person, he knows who he is. I'll be like, all right, looks like I'm going to be distracted for the next hour in these Facebook comments. So I'm not like, I can sit here and this is something I practice. I'm definitely not perfect at it. I'm like everybody else. I get distracted with social media. But one thing I know that has really, really helped is turning off all those notifications on my phone. I have friends that every time somebody likes something, anytime they get a snap, anytime something happens, their phone is lighting up or buzzing. And that will never allow you to get anything done in a meaningful way. So give it a try. If you're somebody that has a notification for everything, seriously try turning off your push notifications and let us know like how awesome, like you're going to thank us when you do it. I already know. Let us know how great it feels to not have to be so connected all the time.
Yeah. And
the last thing I always, when it comes to saying no, I talk about is say no to multitasking. People think that, you know, I hear people be like, oh, I'm such a great multitasker. It's like, no, you're fucking not. Because if you're I mean, you can multitask driving and listening to music, okay? You can multitask like things that aren't really insignificant. You cannot multitask doing any level of work and checking Facebook or doing anything that's meaningful or even having a meaningful conversation with your friends. I was with my family all weekend and I had my phone put away. So that's a you know, level of multitasking. When you're over there trying to be in your phone, having a conversation with somebody who's there with you in person, like you can't really do two things very well.
Rude.
Well, yeah, that's rude, by the way.
You know who you are, okay? You know, it's all about eye contact.
So, you know, multitasking, I hear people say that all the time. I'm great at multitasking. No, you're not. Okay, if you're doing two things at one time, you're not doing either of them well. And I'm telling you this because I used to be a multitasker. Okay, so I know you gotta focus on one thing at a time, especially if you're talking about the work that you're doing, especially if you're talking about a goal that you have. So say no to multitasking. And that's pretty much the biggest things around no. We're going to leave you with some, you know, action items. We've kind of talked about them so far this time, you know, but we'll just recap kind of what we talked about. So when you get off now, you can figure out, you know, you have an arsenal of tips that you can use to start saying no to others so you can say yes to yourself. Ashley, you want to go over what those are?
Yeah. So the biggest thing that you want to start with is doing a self-assessment. What does your typical week look like? Are you in control of your schedule, or are other people? So that is something that you can kind of start evaluating. I love this one too. Define your vision and your values. Gain some clarity around that. Really think about it. What do you want to accomplish in life? How do you want your life to look? The third thing would be come up with a basic template of how you can politely say no to the things like events and, whatever else people ask you to do. The other thing that can be very important, this is the fourth thing, is think of one or two boundaries for yourself. For example, events that only target your market, or meetings can only happen on Tuesdays and Thursdays, or whatever it is. Number 5, pick 2 or 3 times a day that you're going to check your email or check your Facebook notifications or your inbox, and set it on your calendar. It'll kind of be something to look forward to. And then you can move on to your next project. The 6th thing is turn off your push notifications on your phone. Do it now. You'll definitely thank us later. And then the 7th thing is think about the ways that you multitask. How can you set up a system to where you're only focused on one thing at a time, and you'll be way more productive?
All right. So that episode was packed with a lot of stuff. Something I could talk about all the time is saying no. So I hope you guys really enjoyed that. Share some of your insights with us. Hashtag the grind of greatness. Hashtag the power of no. I want to hear sometimes that, some breakthroughs that you guys have had with saying no. How liberated did you feel when you said no for the first time? You might have been nervous about it. Then you realized it wasn't as bad as you thought. How awesome was that feeling? Share that with us, and we will talk to you guys soon. See you next week.
Peace.